When you find people who have a genuine concern, it definitely adds to the whole experience, makes it more wholesome, and you realise there are people out there who want to go beyond that level of conversation.
There was a lady behind me, she must have been about the same age as me, really beautiful woman, right?
Yeah.
And the guy next to me goes, because she's really beautiful. I was like, yeah, but I was like, okay, thanks for letting me know. And he was like encouraging me, like, why don't you talk to her? And I'm like, I don't want to talk to her. And, so all I'm saying is like he was just very authentic.
It's interesting, each country has its own wildness.
Russian men are very majestic.
Yeah, they are.
They're very honourable.
Yep.
They're very serious.
Exactly.
They're very majestic. Do the Uzbeks have that? They have that going on?
Yeah, they do. And even from their dress sense, they're very meticulous in how they dress, and they're very on point, very sharp.
Where have you kind of felt like that's drawn you the most?
From my travels to Cape Town, it's definitely a place that has a lot of beauty about it. When I was leaving Colombia to go to Brazil, and it was on New Year's Eve, effectively. So
what year was this?
This was 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, 2021.
So after the global events.
Yeah, just after the pandemic.
Okay.
It still was quite fresh in the sense of restrictions and trying to know what the laws were in each country. So I was in Colombia for a month, and from there I was flying to Brazil. And this was on the 31st, trying to get to Brazil for New Year's. As I was at the check-in at the airport in Colombia, I only had booked a one-way ticket, so from Colombia to Brazil. I hadn't booked my return yet to England. And at the check-in desk, the woman was like, "Where's your flight ticket to go back to England? How long are you staying in Brazil for?" I said, "Oh, probably just a week or two." And I hadn't booked it. And then she said, "Well, you might not be able to go because you need to book a following ticket, an onwards journey ticket back to the UK."
Why do you have to do that?
So I think it's because they don't want to stay there for a prolonged period of time.
They want to see the proof of it.
They want to see the proof of you that you actually are going to leave at some point. Okay. And so I just literally had my phone out as she was checking my passport, booked the ticket for about 10 days after I was arriving into Brazil to come back to England. So
that must have been a bit of a bummer, because you must have been feeling like, I just wanted to be able to take my time.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, I was quite keen to leave Colombia to carry on now, because I was there for a month, so I'd stayed there for quite long, and I thought, okay, the next step now is Brazil whilst I'm in this part of the world, something that you always think about.
And were you with a friend, or were you on your own?
No, I was travelling for 3 months alone.
Wow. Very unusual.
Very unusual, very different. For the first month, I was with a close friend of mine in Turkey, in Istanbul. Okay. So I spent a lot of time with him. Okay. Caught up on a lot of things and learned a lot. And then after that, next up was to Uzbekistan. Right. Just because it was close, and there was a lot of history there with the Silk Road, and especially with the emperors and visiting Timur's tomb. Yeah. So I wanted to go and see that side of it. I thought, I'm not sure when I'm going to be here in this part of the world next, and the opportunity will arise. So that was really incredible. Very different place. Seeing the people, the Uzbeki people, and them speaking Russian. The landscape was quite different as well. So they have these big city in Tashkent. It's really beautiful. Lots of open space to drive. Not really compared to Istanbul, where Istanbul is quite a walking city. You don't really get that in Uzbekistan. So it's
all cars.
Mostly cars, mostly cars. And then to visit Samarkand from there was incredibly beautiful.
But tell me the Brazil thing, and then let's come to Uzbekistan as well.
So at the end, I had to book my ticket on the spot to go back to leave. Luckily, managed to go through whilst she was checking my passport, and it was within 5 minutes. It was done and dusted, and I could show her the proof that I was going to actually leave Brazil and not stay there indefinitely. Right. Which was interesting, and managed to get to Brazil just in time on the 1st of January in the morning. Yeah.
And then, so you're saying that there was something really special about Brazil, like you say that the people in beach cities, they have a very different...
Yeah, they have a very openness and a wildness to them.
Right.
And I hadn't realised that in Rio, where I was travelling to, a lot of other Brazilians from other parts of Brazil tend to go there for the New Year's. Right. So it has a lot of national tourism in Rio and that part of the year. People are on holidays, people go visit by the beach, and they do the celebrations with all the fireworks in Rio. And so it was quite interesting to see different people from all over Brazil in Rio at that point in time, and some of the backgrounds that they had. But generally, the city itself is such a vibrant place, such a beautiful place. The landscape, I think when you go to a place that has beautiful nature around it, it sort of embodies into the people as well. Yeah,
so give me an example of this. Like, how are those people different? I have an idea, but I want to know from you.
Well, you see that their life is very much more relaxed in one aspect. They sort of go with the flow of things. the sun's out there, they go surfing and things like that.
So just take things in the flow.
Take things in their flow, exactly. There's not this constant chase like we have in Europe for.
And like when you sit down with them, they don't want to just talk about what you do for a living and how much money are you making, when are you going to buy your house. It's not about. It's a very different conversation.
No, not at all. The people are so, if you could say the word real.
Right.
They want to have a real conversation with you about who you are.
That must be very satisfying.
Absolutely, it's very fulfilling.
Fulfilling is the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
Because it goes beyond the sort of facade of the initial conversation and just having that surface level. You can go a bit deeper and you can get to know people on a different level, and I guess it's part of just that spirit of just being into the world, and you being in the unknown for yourself, you attract and bring that out of other people as well, because you want to go beyond it. It's very interesting when you travel alone. You're sort of forced to put yourself into a situation where you have to speak to people that you might not necessarily do when you're in your comfort zone or in your locality. Yeah,
because you can keep yourself busy with your wife and kid or with your friends.
Exactly,
and you can just switch off.
Yeah, exactly, and you don't necessarily need that relationship or build that conversation. Whereas when you're traveling, you want to make the most of your time, you want to get to know as many people as you want, as you're able to, and build those connections for a longer period. And you get to meet people from all over the world, which is.
I remember I was on a flight to Malaysia for the first time. This was 2005.
Yeah.
And I can't sleep on planes. And I was doing 2 legs, so it was 7 hours to Dubai and then 7 hours to Malaysia.
Right.
And then when I got to Dubai, the next flight that I got on, there was a load of people that got on. And I got situated with a British guy.
Yeah.
So he was quite. I mean, at that time I was about 25. I'm guessing he was about 50, 55. Ish. And with my experience growing up in Britain, that kind of a person, if let's be honest, when you're a brown kid and you're and this is like just after like, I think this was a month or a year, I think a year after like 7/7 and everything.
Yeah.
Tensions, racial tensions are high and all these political tensions, everything's really high. I wasn't expecting conversation. I wasn't expecting any bonding. I wasn't expecting somebody to be authentic with me.
Yeah.
So I just came and sat on that seat. This guy was next to me, and I just kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't want to. I didn't want to like get into anything. Yeah. But what was really interesting was he started talking to me himself.
Yeah.
So that was immediately like at 25, if an elder like that is talking to you, that's very validating anyway.
Yeah.
But he wanted to have a very real conversation with me. That was really nice.
Yeah.
And he was telling me about what his life was like, and he used to work on oil rigs in the North Sea or something. And I still remember this guy to this day. I still remember him vividly, what he looks like.
Yeah.
This is 15, 17, 18 years ago.
Wow.
And he was just a really nice guy. It was just no drama, no nothing.
Yeah.
And then there was a lady in front of me, and she had a daughter. Was just starting to get into photography at this point. And the girl kept looking at me, and she was just kind of playing with us and stuff like that. And I asked the lady, I said, "Oh, can I take a picture of your daughter?" And she was like, "Yeah, go ahead." So I just took nice pictures of her. And I told her, this is pre-social media. But I said, "Look, I'm not going to post it anywhere."
Yeah.
But I asked for permission. Really cute girl, like 4 or 5 years old. Do you mind if she said, "Yeah, absolutely." And the girl was posing for me and taking like nice little cute pictures of her. And the guy next to me, he was like playing with her a little bit, and we were just having a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
And there was a lady behind me. She must have been about the same age as me. Really beautiful woman, right?
Yeah.
And the guy next to me goes, because she's really beautiful. I was like, "Yeah, but," I was like, "Okay, thanks for letting me know." And he was like encouraging me, like, "Why don't you talk to her?" And I'm like, "I don't want to talk to her." Yeah. So all I'm saying is like he was just very authentic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And here in this country, you go out, you go to the restaurant, or especially in London, you meet people.
Yeah.
You just know straight away that conversation is not authentic. They're just having that conversation with you because they have to have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
Nobody's really interested. They're just interested in how can I make more money, or those kind of things.
It's very surface level, isn't it?
Yeah, very. Does that not annoy you? Does it frustrate you, or just makes you feel unfulfilled?
I think you have to sort of view it about what you're bringing to the table, your own intentions. So if you're there and you have this thing in your head where whoever you meet, you try and uplift them in whatever way, then you can get past that quite quickly. Okay. And you just go with that.
But do you? Yeah, but I you know me now a little bit. I talk to people, they end up getting triggered for no reason. I say something and they just get triggered. You know this. I try to say to them, "You don't look too, is everything okay?" And then I get told off for asking somebody if they're okay.
Yeah.
Then what do you do in that situation? Yeah. I mean, I get these situations all the time.
Yeah, because you have a genuine concern and you're asking, but they don't feel that, for whatever reason, they don't allow themselves to be genuine in that situation. Yes. And there's a lot of it's fear of how they're going to be viewed and what, not to say the wrong thing and not to
I've
expose
been
them.
up to people that you and I know, they've had problems with their tires on their car.
Yeah.
I have the exact same car. I've had this exact same issue. I've gone up to them and said, I've had the same issue. Let me help you with this. And they're effing and blinding at me.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, and they're making me feel like you're the idiot for trying to offer to help me. And I'm thinking, this doesn't make any sense.
I think also people have this thing about when someone tries to help you, there's almost a reluctance to accept the help.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it's something that they have their own internal, where they feel like they're in control and they don't want to feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes down to that.
So you just end up triggering the vulnerability.
So you trigger the vulnerability, but then you
become the villain.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's exactly what I hate about the society that we're in now. That's exactly what I hate about this society. Honestly, I'm genuinely very bitter about it because it's just rubbish.
What do you feel it's triggering? Is it anxiety? I mean, from what I see, it's a lot of anxiety about the future and the present. So everyone's captured into the future.
Okay. Do you want like a polite diplomatic answer, or do you want like a moderate answer, or do you want a very real answer?
No, I want the real answer. Yeah.
All right. So it's not that I don't have insecurities. I do have insecurities, of course. I have insecurities. I have there are things that I feel insecure about and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of things, especially where men are concerned, that I'm not insecure about. I'm very secure in myself about many, many things.
Yeah.
And I think that is the thing that becomes a triggering element, because it's not a bother for me. So that actually adds to the anxiety, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? It becomes very triggering for the other person because I'm very comfortable in myself. Yeah. Yeah. So not in every way.
Yeah. So you have this element where you're not on the defensive.
Yeah.
But the other person
is. I can be very open. I can be very open-hearted about things, and I'll give you an example. I went to somebody's house, and this turned into massive drama. I just said, "Look, you look like somebody that has been the victim of sihr." Right? I just said it, but I said it out of concern. Yeah. Right? And I also said it, and I've had some experience with sihr, so I was saying it in the sense that if you are a victim of it, these are some of the things that you'd be able to do to get over it. I said it out of concern. We had a massive drama about it. It turned into a massive fight. You don't have rhythm to speak about things. Who are you to talk about this? Blah blah blah. And I just felt like I was the idiot, and I just had to leave the room and everything. And then literally about 6 months later, in your coffee shop. One of your staff said it to me, and I was like, all right. Yeah. And then I goes, well, what do you suggest? He said, oh, you look like you've had a bit of sihr, or you've had a bit of trauma or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, okay, what do you think I should do? And he goes, oh, drink this tea. And I was like, all right. Then I went and bought the tea and drank it, and it helped. Yeah. So I'm very comfortable like that.
And you're very open.
Very open. I can tell when somebody's got an agenda. If somebody's having a dig at me, it's coming from a place of competition or coming from a place of like narcissism or malice. Yeah. I will react to that very badly. Or especially if it's coming from a place of disrespect, then forget it. If somebody's coming from a place of concern, I can tell the difference. And if they're saying it out of concern, I'm like, yeah, cool. Yeah. I'll take it.
Exactly, yeah.
But you're very open like that as well.
Well, I think you have to sort of get beyond your own illusion of who you are and what you have. And when people feel defensive, it's because it's shattering something that they know, they think they know about themselves, or they feel like they've got everything under control. So you have to see everyone as a learning point.
So it makes you angry for burst. They're angry at you because you burst their bubble.
Exactly.
That's what it is. Yeah. But I'm not doing it on purpose. No. I'm very, very careful now. I try not to speak to anybody. I try not to talk. Yeah. So you're the only person I get to speak to, really. And now you've shut the coffee shop down. I can't talk to you anymore. I'm trying to have an open conversation with you.
But I think at the same time, as much as there's people who feel defensive, there's a lot of people out there who are willing to talk. And it's just trying to get to that stage with them.
They're rarer and rarer.
They are getting rarer and rarer.
They're rare. Even like, in your coffee shop, I noticed that even there it was getting rarer and rarer. And I feel like there's a lot more of posturing taking place now. There's a lot of people that are coming out with opinions. Yeah. They feel the need to share their opinion, and that opinion is not necessarily the view that everybody. They're not ready to accept a different opinion either. It's not an opinion that anybody else holds necessarily. Yeah.
So everyone's sticking to their own.
Yeah, and they're kind of being taking preemptive strikes and coming in and just having a preemptive, letting everybody know this is what my opinion is, and you don't have any other opinion against mine kind of thing. I'm like,
yeah.
But you must feel like having all this travel and having those kind of fulfilling experiences must have contributed to your ability to be more real, because it teaches you something in the process.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what you tend to do is you open yourself up to listen to the other person more, and which is the key, because we always forget we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So a lot of it we always wanted to splurt out as much as we can, but in reality you should be listening to as much as possible to be able to respond accordingly. A lot of the time when we speak to people, it's just we're waiting for them to stop speaking just so we can speak, and it shouldn't be.
But there are a lot of people that do a lot of talking,
and that's true.
You just wait and they just carry on. They don't stop. Like they'll never stop. You just keep waiting. They don't know when to stop.
And I think a lot of it comes down to just being present in the moment. Once you're present in the moment, whoever you're with, it just makes that element of conversation flow better.
You know, like I remember even when I went to Malaysia this time, right? So we'd been awake for about 22 hours, something like that, maybe 27 hours. But I needed to go and get something to eat. We just landed at our apartment. We just got there. I needed to go and get something to eat. I came out of the apartment, didn't know where I was or anything. And I asked this guy, goes, can you tell me where the local McDonald's is? That's all I could think of. It's all halal out there anyway. Do you know where the local McDonald's is? And he goes, yeah, you just go straight that way and then take a left and blah. He goes, how long will it take? He goes, oh, it's a 20-minute walk. And it's like 32 degrees sun. I've been awake for a very long time. I'm thinking, I don't know if I can do this, right? And he just takes one look at me and he goes, I can fetch you, because their English is a little bit different. I goes, oh, do you mean you can take me? He goes, yeah, sure, I'll take you. I goes, okay, how much? Because he was a taxi driver, but it's just the way he went about it was still very friendly. And I didn't know he was a taxi driver at the time. He goes, I'll take you. So I jumped in the car with him. I did think I'm about to get stabbed or something. I got in the car with him there and then. He drove me down to McDonald's, placed the order for me because they had to speak Malaysian. They didn't understand English. Placed the order for me. I gave him the cash for the thing. Dropped me back off at the apartment. He went back inside. He goes, here's my WhatsApp number. If you need driving around anywhere, I'll let you know. But I don't think you would ever get that experience in a country like here. I don't know. There maybe some parts of Europe you'd get. I mean, even in Istanbul, I don't know if you'd get that kind of experience anymore. You just get ripped off. Everybody's aggressive. They don't want to talk to you, and they just want to give you aggro. You know. But these real experiences are so fulfilling.
Exactly. When you find people who have a genuine concern, it definitely adds to the whole experience, makes it more wholesome, and you realize there are people out there who want to go beyond that level of conversation, and who are when you go to some of these countries, people are almost putting the best foot forward as well, so they want you to know about their country. Like for example, in Uzbekistan, it's not really visited.
Okay. Tell me more about Uzbekistan now.
I mean, even on getting the flight from Turkey to Uzbekistan from Istanbul, I mean, I was like the odd one out, basically, because it's not a place that has a lot of tourism in that sense.
So they're all Russian-looking people.
So they're all Russian-looking, sort of Mongolian-esque.
Okay. Were you getting stares?
I was getting stares, and I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting.
Were you feeling uncomfortable or?
No, I was just like, it wasn't a sort of look of, oh, what's he doing? It's just sort of curious, exactly, and sort of a surprised look. Why is he going there? So it was an interesting journey there. And then when you get there, again, people are so welcoming. They want you to sort of know about their country and their history, and they have their own very specific. Do you feel it as soon as you get to the?
I always feel like as soon as you get to the airport, whatever the vibe or the mood of the airport is reflective of the entire.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah.
You know, I've got just to quickly interject. I've got one friend who has travelled all over the world.
Right.
He's been to many countries, and he's lived in many countries: Japan, Indonesia, Turkey, Mexico. Wow. He's lived in all these places, right? Amazing. And he has whatever vices a country has. He will at least have one positive thing to say about that country, if not several.
Yeah.
But he'd never been to the UK. And last year, he had to come to the UK. He just had to come for about, and I just had a flight that kind of stopped over for an hour or two, and then jump on another flight and go to Istanbul.
Yeah.
And he came over, got into Manchester Airport, called me from Manchester Airport, and goes, God, this is a miserable country. And he got on the plane and disappeared.
Wow.
But that was it. And I was like, yeah, you're right.
Flew straight back.
And he just went to the next place. He just was not interested. And he goes, I've got no interest in coming back to this place at all. Because it gives you, it's very, I forget the actual temperature of the country. It's very cold here. People are very cold and distant and gloomy, you know.
Was he from England initially?
He's from, he's part US, part Mexican.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting to see someone like that comes here for the first time and has that sort of experience.
Yeah. And he's got a Japanese wife, I think. So he's lived in Japan and just didn't have anything nice to say about the UK. Because like, God, this place is like death warmed up.
Yeah.
And you do feel, I've come back from Pakistan. I remember I went to Pakistan for several weeks.
Yeah.
got on the plane, landed at Manchester Airport, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, it's just...
The energy changes completely.
Yeah, but you don't experience in that, in Spain. When I went to Malaysia for the first time, it had such a nice vibe. This time it wasn't very good.
Right.
After and the energy of the place, even in KL, had gone down a lot.
Okay,
but when I'd been the first time, it was very calm, very uplifting energy, and just that alone was very...
Yeah.
And when I went to northern Spain, I went to northern Spain, and I went to Bilbao. Airport itself was kind of half and half. As soon as I got out of the airport, it just bit by bit, it just had a lovely vibe to it.
It started to flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Each country has its own wildness and energy. And I think us being from the UK, we sort of, once you step out, you realise the difference that we're actually living in a pond to an extent. And there's a whole world out there.
Yeah.
And by moving and shaking within yourself, by going to these new places, you're sort of going into the unknown of yourself as well. And that's what drives that energy.
Because it becomes a mirror to you, doesn't it?
Exactly.
So tell me more about Uzbekistan.
So as soon as I got there, I arrived, and I was only going to be there for a week. After that, I was going to be traveling to Colombia, so I didn't have much time.
Right, okay.
So stayed in Tashkent for the first few days. Again, beautiful city, a lot of history. You sort of see the statues of Amir Timur.
Yeah.
And his own history, and a beautiful statue of him on a horse right in the middle of the city centre. And again, the place was very beautiful. The people are so friendly. They have their own cuisine. So one of the dishes that they do is called narayan. It's like a horse meat dish.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a traditional dish with noodles. But it's cold. I think you can have it hot or cold, but I tried it cold. So that was quite an interesting experience to try that cuisine and their locality of food. One of the things that was really beautiful was when you go to visit the tomb of Emir Timur. It's a whole courtyard, and they've really preserved it really well. So he's buried with his sons and his sheikh in his tomb, his maqam. And in the corner of the courtyard of where his maqam is, there's a huge sort of well-esque type place where they used to drink pomegranate juice, the soldiers, before they used to go out to battle.
Wow.
And it was a sort of a meeting.
Who told you all this stuff?
There was like a tour initiated, and as you're in the area of the museum, effectively, they sort of give you some guidance and history about the different places. So Uzbekistan, it was really beautiful. It has a lot of history. You sort of see that ancient Silk Road-esque people and their sort of day-to-day living. Language wasn't. Everyone spoke English fairly well there. In fact, interestingly, they spoke better English in Uzbekistan than they did in Turkey, because in Turkey not many people speak English that well. It's mostly the younger generation.
Well, that is a revelation.
Yeah.
And what was the weather like over there?
When I was there, it was around October, November time, so it was getting colder. It was sort of
but you could still walk around in a jumper.
Yeah, you could still walk around in a jumper or a light jacket.
And the people were very welcoming, and it's quite cheap to live out there, presumably.
Yeah, reasonably cheap. The only food-wise, everything else was really cheap.
The food was clean and hygienic, like not give you no tummy trouble.
I was quite impressed how modern Tashkent was, actually. There was a lot
because they've got a lot of Russian influence as well, anyway.
They do, exactly.
And they're probably going to get Chinese influence soon, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because they'll probably end up being part of BRICS and stuff.
Exactly.
I have a feeling I've got some sort of. I think I've got Uyghur ancestry.
Yeah.
Because I've kind of been tracing it back, but the Uzbekistan, they kind of have some link to that.
They will do, yeah.
Yeah, so I think I probably have some sort of tiny little fragment of ancestry kind of linked to there, and I don't have any to Turkey.
Right, okay. Yeah, they are really interesting people. And they're sort of go-getters as well. A lot of interesting coffee shops there, a lot of interesting establishments food-wise and everything.
So what are the men, because like Russian men, they're quite, I don't know if you've seen Queen's Gambit, but Russian men are very majestic.
Yeah, they are.
They're very honourable.
Yep.
They're very serious. Exactly. They're very majestic. Do the Uzbeks have that? They have that going on?
Yeah, they do. And even from their dress sense, they're very meticulous in how they dress, and they're very on point, very sharp. So it's just beautiful to see that.
They have the tradition of the medicine as well. So they have the tradition of the Chinese medicine as well.
Right.
So they're into their like acupuncture and all that kind of stuff. So they're very. But you don't hear about Uzbekistan in the news or anything.
No, it's quite siloed off, isn't it? It's quite quiet. And
I'm really intrigued now.
Yeah. And Samarkand is really, really beautiful.
So you can get a visa to go there quite easily?
Yeah, I didn't need any visa. Just flew straight in. I think maybe you have a month or 3 months stay.
And you got about, you didn't have to get worried about anything?
No, I got the train from Tashkent to go to Samarkand for the day, like, by myself. It was perfectly fine. It was on a nice train journey.
Could you go there with a wife and kid quite easily?
Yeah, I think so. It'd be an interesting place to visit, definitely.
Tell me more about the men there. This is intriguing.
So one of the men that I met was one of them, as I got to the airport, it was a young man, and he was selling SIM cards. So as soon as I got there, I got a SIM card from him. I ended up having a good conversation, took his number, sort of said he lives in the area, so I could catch up if I needed, or if I needed anything. So it was quite helpful in that respect. So I said, okay, perfect. I ended up meeting him once, and he was sort of from the younger generation now. And they have an interesting view on life where they all know about Islam. And him in particular, it's almost sort of being left behind a bit now. So they're not on the forefront of understanding the full history.
But they're interested.
Okay. And they are practicing to an extent. I mean, they're born Muslim, but how much of that they carry out is not. It varies there, obviously, people to people, and especially in Tashkent, it was very different to Samarkand. The men at Samarkand, they're a lot more understanding of what's going on,
right?
And
so they're quite aware,
and there's a lot more history. Yeah, a lot more history there as well. Tashkent is almost a bit more modernized.
Yeah,
more parties, clubs,
cosmopolitan, and all
exactly.
That kind of stuff,
Whereas Samarkand still got that sort of ancient
rural aspect
to it. Yeah, and it was just an interesting place to visit and to be.
I went and stayed in Turkey twice now. I've stayed in Turkey for a week or two at a time with a Turkish family. I've done that twice. I did it once in 2009, and then I did it in 2010, I think it was. And the family that I stayed with, and this was very common in Istanbul, the boys were drinking. Right. They had no interest in religion whatsoever. They were obviously Muslim by name. Absolutely no interest in religion. Very, very, very boyish behavior. So even you're like 25, 26, you're leaving your clothes on the floor for your mom to clean up after you. No sense of kind of responsibility or maturity or anything. Yeah. And just all interested in just living the kind of club life, very Americanized, very American influenced. Yeah. And just honestly, just little kids. Yeah. And even when they were getting older, it didn't seem to be much different. They spoke English very well. I remember we went up to the mosque. I think we went to the Blue Mosque. I went with my mum and dad. They were very respectful of my parents. Yeah. So they still had respect for elders in that sense. I remember we went. They came to help us because it was like, oh, the guests are here. So in that sense, they were very respectful. That was very nice. What I liked about them. So they came. They were very very respectful of my dad. Yeah. And then if my dad, even though we were the guests, because there was no other elder men in that congregation at that time. Yeah. They all treated my dad as like, well, he's the head. He decides what's going to happen now. So my dad was like, I want to get on the bus and I want to go into town. So everybody they just facilitated all of that. Yeah. The boys, they were all like 20 somethings. So in that way, they were really good. Yeah. And then, okay, we've got to get the bus from here and we've got to get on the boat from here and all that kind of stuff. But I remember we went up to the mosque, the Blue Mosque. They refused to go in. Really? Yeah, they didn't. They're just like, no, we're staying outside because they've been taught a lot of resentment and everything for the religion, for the history that precedes them. Yeah. So that was a bit, and then when I went to stay with them a year later, it was drinking, smoking, clubbing, all that kind of stuff, and
it feels like that's just going to get worse now in Turkey.
Yeah, and then I've been in Turkey just about 6 months ago. Yeah. And the thing that really put me off was just this. I can't blame them for this, but for me, learning a new language is really tough now, and they weren't speaking English, so yeah. I thought this is just not going to work for me. It was a place that I would have considered, but just in terms of vibe, it just didn't work for me anyway. I don't know what, it just didn't do anything for me.
Yeah, Turkey's got both sides to it, hasn't it? It's getting. That sort of gap between both sides is getting greater and greater now. Yeah. And
I've been, because I'm a huge fan of Vertical, the TV series. Before we continue on this video, I just want to invite you to my Discord community. Look, the world has changed, and it is changing still. And on my Discord, which is a simple mobile app that you can use, you can stay in touch with other like-minded people like me who are staying informed of the things that are happening around the world that are going to affect our daily lives very, very soon. So come and join me on my Discord community. And let's grow together and let's navigate this changing world order together. I really like the presentation of men, the personification of men in that series. I love that. Yeah. And that's what I was looking for. Like, where is this in Turkey? And I just, everywhere I go in Turkey, I don't seem to find it anywhere. That's the place I would hang out. Wherever there's that kind of a man is those kind of men with those kind of thoughts or those kind of personalities. That's where I want to hang out.
So Konya. So when I was visiting Turkey,
I
first went to Alanya, which is more of a sort of holiday destination, and then a lot of British tourism there as well, actually. So yeah, end up seeing a lot of people that you would effectively see here. So I wanted to see a bit more of the real Turkey, so I ended up catching a bus, which was about 5-6 hour journey from Alanya to Konya. And Konya was a bit more, whereas Alanya is a bit more by the beach, Konya was a bit more further up in the mountains, so the temperature changes quite quickly. And that's where Rumi is buried, and they also have a maqam for Shams Abriz as well. So it's a very, very beautiful place, and they've really preserved that element. And you see that across Turkey, that they've really preserved a lot of the history, and whether it's the mosques or the tombs, they've really done a great job in that aspect. So Konya you get to see a bit more of the real Turkey and the real people from the local food. They have the lahmacans, which is like their pizza dishes and their speciality. Yeah. So it was a really nice place to see that element. And just by being in the Poet City, it's very different. The atmosphere, people are a bit more alive and a bit more friendlier, a bit more real as well.
Okay.
Able to have a
conversation.
You
noticed that?
You see that difference. Whereas in Alanya's, people want to sell you things. It's a bit more of a market hustle.
A bit more capitalist influence.
Exactly, yeah. Right. So that was quite an interesting place. I think Turkey across the board, it has these pockets of cities.
Yeah, I mean, I see. When not this time that I went. When I went last time, I stayed in Istanbul for about a week. Then we drove to, I can't remember what Durje the place was called.
Right.
And it's right by the Black Sea, so it's about 40 minutes from the Black Sea.
Oh wow! Okay.
So as we were driving, all that you could see was like these industrial towns where they were building units to do whatever, like build coal mines or whatever. There's a lot of it. You kind of felt transported back to like 1935 or something in a lot of ways. Not in terms of lack of technology, in terms of the new infrastructure that's being built that's already exists in the UK or in America or whatever.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that, and we got there. And the stark difference between Istanbul and Durje was, in Durje, most of the women were covered. Right. I think that's now changed quite a bit in Istanbul even now anyway. But in Durje, a lot of the women were covered, and the mosque was a focal point of the local, because it was a village, effectively. There was more of the outward religiosity that was there. Yeah. But having said that, and this is the thing, like that I've noticed more and more in the last several years, is that just because there's outward religiosity, just because somebody is outwardly godly, it doesn't mean that there's inward godliness as well.
Yeah.
You know, Sheikh Darqawi talks about these things as well. That people of the modern times, the more they increase in outward religiosity, the more outwardly religious they are. Yeah. The more inwardly irreligious they are, the more outwardly godly they are, the more inwardly ungodly they are.
Exactly.
He talks about that, and you see a little bit of it there. So. You know, I remember so basically where we stayed it was a little hut, which was the guy's mother's house. So it was basically the kid's grandma. Yeah. And it was almost like it wasn't a mud hut, but it was similar to a mud hut. And you had to drive up into the mountains. You just drive and drive and drive. You just drive like almost on a vertical, it feels like a vertical incline. And you just go straight. There's no street lighting. There's no road markings, nothing. Yeah. There's just some trees that have been cut away. You just drive for 15 minutes straight.
Wow.
You just go
all the way up.
You just keep going. And then after 15 minutes, you end up at a pylon, so an electricity pylon. And there's some houses around it. There's a cow that's taking a nap next to a Land Rover. And you just literally transported back to 1924 or something, right? Wow. And we just stayed in the hut. But it was very calm. Yeah. And it was very, you know, they brought in some nuts from the farm, and they got some milk from the cow and all that kind of stuff. So in that sense, it was good. But I fell ill immediately because my body cannot handle the rawness of it all. Yeah. And then a lady gave me, this is where I first learned about herbal. Like my first intro to herbs probably was at that moment, because I had really intense nausea and I was just going all over the place. Wow. And this lady, she couldn't speak a word of English. And I went up to her and I went, like this. I made all these faces at her. And then she said something to me. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. She was like cutting all this garlic and everything. Garlic and mint and all this kind of stuff. She was sorting it all out. And she goes,
there you go.
Yeah, she gestures towards me, right? Yeah. So I put the garlic in my mouth. Absolutely disgusting. She gives me some water. And I was fine within 5 minutes. Wow. And I was like, what the... So that was like my really first kind of intro to that thing. Like...
And she was from, I guess, all local produce and ingredients.
Yeah, the garlic was local produce, and it was just phenomenal.
That's incredible.
So that was really good. But we went back in, as we were driving back down in the mountains, like, you'd go past a house, you'd see the woman walking around, she's got hijab on, She's modestly dressed and everything.
Yeah.
And the guy's got a kind of Budweiser in his hand or something, and he's drinking alcohol. And I'm like, this is just so weird.
Yeah.
You know, and he's clearly a husband. And then you go in, and then some of the experiences that I had that I wouldn't speak about, publicly, but when I was there, like you meet some of the kids there. So they're doing the salah and all that kind of stuff, but they have no concept of what does it mean to be Muslim, you know, what the character and all that stuff is. It was a bit, you know, this girls are smoking, they've got a hijab on, they're smoking away, and they're doing this and they're doing that. It's like, it was all a bit weird.
It's an interesting contrast.
It was a weird mix, yeah, and the whole thing was really weird.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, I was like, okay, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Because I was very seriously looking at that place, thinking, okay, I could potentially see myself moving out here.
Really?
I wasn't married then, so maybe I could marry somebody there, I could get settled. I just got put off. Those kind of 2 or 3 days I was there, I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it was very outward, kind of.
It's interesting. You have different places that pull you in different directions, and and that's part of the thing about to continuously travel and to keep moving. Is that you'll eventually resonate with certain places a bit more, whether you want to stay there for longer or not. Something tends to open up as you go through.
Where have you kind of felt like that's drawn you the most?
Well, I definitely had from my travels to Cape Town, it's definitely a place that has a lot of beauty about it, especially as terms of the weather and the contrast. When it's winter here, it tends to be summer there, so you get both elements of the beauty.
And the winter's not that harsh anyway.
And the winter's not that harsh, no, and it's got a lot of
rawness.
Weather's
important for us Brits now, isn't it? It's an actual real kind of consideration for us.
Well, it just changes your whole dynamic and your energy as well. When winters here tend to be really long, especially this last winter. It felt like a real stretch.
I mean, we had colded right up until first week of June, and we were still wearing coats, you know.
Yeah, and it's just recently starting to get better now. But I think that element of the weather and nature all has an impact on you and how you feel and on your day-to-day and just your own drive and energy. So if you're in a place that's warmer and if you can aim to get somewhere warmer, especially for us from being the subcontinent, we're just naturally built that way anyway, to be in that sort of weather and environment. The cold is not really for us. We're not accustomed to it. So
even being born in this country, the genes just don't settle well with it, do they?
No, they don't, and I don't think they ever will.
No, it's not going to work for me, never.
But I think it's one of those things that you've got to eventually, over time, the more you sort of move and shake and get to different places, you pick up certain things. And I think the time we live in now is not maybe necessarily about just living in one specific place. It's about having the ability to go and spend some time here.
What about just picking everything up? You know, your cupboards and your tables and your clothes and it's just so, especially with a wife and kid, it's so hard.
And I think it's also an element of going into that what you fear and getting out of the comfort zone.
But then how do you even survive economically in these places and all of that as well?
Well, this is the thing. It's now there's so many different ways out there in terms of how to, like, for example, your podcast is online.
But my podcast here is in a studio, so I can't picking the studio up and taking it to another country is hard work.
Yeah,
there's like 5 grams worth of equipment. I just stress about putting everything into the container in the first place. That's what I mean. It's not somebody other than me. Wouldn't even bat an eyelid. They would just stick everything in a container and be done with it. Like, I moved out.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything, because it's all transportable. But I would really stress about it.
Well, that's the thing. You've got to sort of because you don't know what's going to be next around the corner, and we know is that wherever we go, there's always going to be things that open up for us, and you will naturally. Being in a different place in a new environment, you will stretch yourself to get out of your comfort zone.
You force yourself.
Whether it's having conversations with people, whether it's just learning a language, whatever it is to get accustomed to, you stretch yourself, and then that ability and the energy that you get from that opens the doors for you to do anything really that you can or want to do, whatever you feel, whether it's passionate about or whether it's just to make money. There's so many different ways now, especially online, and people doing all sorts different models of ways of making money. I think a lot of it has changed where you don't necessarily need to be in a specific place. For example, in Colombia, which is quite interesting, in Medellin, you had a lot of Americans living in Medellin,
but earning an American wage.
And you go to these coffee shops and you'd see them all just on their laptops, remote working and on their conference calls, and that was quite an interesting.
I see when I was in London, if the problem was my wife was tied down to the job. She had to be there physically. And even now she has to go. She has to go into work once a week. But because we can only survive with 2 incomes. But if there was a way that she could have got away from her job physically, then we would have never stayed, because the rent in London was just extortionate. And she loves to travel. we would have never stayed in the same place, and we didn't have kids at that point.
Yeah.
So we would have just kept moving. That would have been ideal. We just couldn't pull it off. I wanted to do that. We set out with the intention to do that before we got to London. That's what we're going to try and do. And we just couldn't pull it off. I wanted to though.
And then you'll see yourself. So as I'm sure as you've experienced as well, when you've been to Turkey and all these places, when you speak English and you're from England, even though we look like the way we look, you sort of transcend a few levels. Maybe within society to an extent that you can engage with people who more likely to be on a different level.
Pakistan definitely used to be the case.
Definitely.
I don't know if it's the case as much as it used to be, but definitely used to be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you consider being in Pakistan for a longer period of time?
So Pakistan physically is just in terms of health. I really suffer. This is all Pakistan. This was 3 weeks in Pakistan.
The boldness.
Yeah, this was 3 weeks in Pakistan. Show this to the camera. This literally all. I mean, I used to have I was telling people yesterday. I used to have the thickest hair ever. I had very, very thick hair. I've been to hairdressers where they've gotten angry with me, like because it's struggling to cut my hair. Like your hair's so thick.
Yeah.
In my 20s, and then 3 weeks in Pakistan, and I had to turn into a completely different person.
Wow.
So my health, I can't manage in Pakistan, or I feel like I can't manage in Pakistan. I do like Pakistan though. I do feel very calm there. I enjoy the vibe there. How long I could stay there permanent, like as a permanent resident, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would love to be there at least several weeks a year. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's good. I think it's definitely been in that environment, isn't it? That wildness and.
Yeah. So there's a lot, like, you know, when you talk about wildness, I remember I took my there was the rear driver's side door on my car had stopped opening.
Yeah.
I took it in for the MOT and it failed. The MOT, they said you have to have it redone.
Right.
And then I spoke to them and they were like, "Oh, you're gonna have to replace the door, right?" And it was just a lock that wasn't being undone properly. I thought it was a bit extreme to replace the entire door just because the lock's not opening properly. I know, I understand the health and safety implications of it, but it's a bit extreme to need to replace the door. Like, why can't you just go in and try and fix it?
Yeah.
So they just weren't having any of it. So I took it back to the mechanic that we'd had for years back at where my parents live, because I can't remember where I was, London or somewhere at that time. So I came back to visit my parents, took the car back to that guy. That guy wasn't there.
Right.
The main guy, he wasn't there. His brother was there, and his brother, he comes over from Pakistan and then goes back, and then comes over and then goes back.
Yeah.
And this guy has this kind of wildness that you talk about. Like he's you know, even like when I went just a month ago, I had a pigeon come and land on my head.
Oh, wow.
Right. And he just took it off my head and he's holding it. He goes, "Oh, he just likes you." He's just friends with the pigeon. That just doesn't happen here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so he was back, and you know, the thing is, he's very polite.
Yeah.
He's very affable, but he's not a pushover. No. Do you know what I mean? He's got a lovely balance going on. Anyway, I took the car to him. I said, "Look, they failed the MOT," and he goes, "No problem." And we just dismantled the entire door, figured the latch out, he goes, "I'm not giving up until I fix this."
Yeah.
And then he fixed the whole thing and just put it back together. Then he charged me like 10 quid or something, and I was on my way. And that would only happen with a wild man like this, because it's a sense of pride.
Exactly.
For him, and there's a sense of determination there, and he's thinking about, how can I make a lifetime customer? We were already lifetime customers. He's thinking about, how can I make a lifetime customer out of this person?
Yeah.
I don't want to let this person down. He's thinking about his honor. The other person would just be thinking, how can I make as much money from this transaction?
Yes.
Massive contrast.
Complete different view, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I love. And he doesn't remember. When I saw him a month ago, he didn't know who I was. He didn't remember me. Yeah. I still remember him. So I knew who he was. I said, "Oh, you're his brother." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "How do you know?" I goes, "We've met before."
Yeah.
He has no memory. But his brother, I'll tell you something really interesting about his brother. His brother, when I got married, this is going back about 12 years now. It was about a year into my marriage. He just got back from Pakistan, and he was showing us a video at his house of his. So he lives. I can't remember the name of the place in Pakistan. It's not Gilgit. It might be Gilgit. It's about an hour from Islamabad airport.
Okay.
Or Gwadar or Dina or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of places. It's not quite mountains.
Yeah.
It's on the way to the mountains.
Right. Okay.
Right. And so that place where where they are, the food is still very pure, very raw, just like the Black Sea place, right?
Yeah.
Very pure, very raw. They're very wild in terms of living and all this kind of stuff, right? So showing us this house of his, massive house, like 6, 7, 8 bedroom house.
Yeah.
That's cost him about £7,000 to buy or something,
Wow.
right? he's got this entire house, and what he's done, he took some solar panels from here.
Yeah.
Right, he got them shipped. I don't know. He put some. I don't know how he did it. I think he did say he put some in some suitcases.
Oh, really? Wow.
And then shipped some, and I don't know how he figured it all out. But he got them sent over there.
Yeah.
And then he got a generator over there, and then he himself wired the entire house himself. And then with the he put the solar panels on the roof of the house, because obviously the sun is just blasting every single day.
All the time. Yeah.
And then he wired it into a generator into the house. And then obviously, in Pakistan, they have load shedding. Yeah. They lose power every few hours.
Yeah.
And he's got it on film. And the power goes. The fridge is still working. The TV's still working. Amazing. The low level lights are still on.
Yeah.
And he goes, that'll go for an hour.
Amazing.
And all of that is powered by the solar power.
Yeah. So very resourceful there.
Very resourceful, yeah. And he did that all by himself. He goes, do you want to go and stay there with your wife for a couple of months? And I was like, yeah, I want to. My wife was like, no.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. You can be creative in those sort of places, can't you? You can just get on with it.
Yeah. Here you'd have to worry about regulation.
Yeah.
And health. I'm not saying these things aren't important, but regulation, health and safety, planning permit, blah, 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 blah. There's 1,000 bits of red tape.
That kill.
You just give up immediately.
Yeah, exactly. You don't feel the need to carry on. And
yeah, it just completely destroys your creativity.
It does. It does. It really does. I think that's a big thing, especially speaking about traveling and everything else, and just the weather and everything else that comes with that, the energy. I think what tends to happen is that we become almost mundane in our lives. Zombified. There's no adventure. There's no higher aspirations, and it's almost what the traveling does. Yeah. It sort of kickstarts or reignites that energy.
Is that what you're then searching for when you go traveling?
I think it comes with it. It's not necessarily you search for it. It just comes as part of the process. And I think, again, part of it comes down to just stretching your own self and getting out of your comfort zone.
But do you feel you have to be on your own when you do that?
Not necessarily. I think
if you went with your wife and kid, do you think it would still happen for you?
I think it could be with anybody, yeah. Okay. It just has to be, the intention has to be there, and then that will just open up as you go through. Traveling with your family or traveling with your friends, I think what we tend to have in our lives is a lot of the stories that we get from not just from traveling, really, and from the stories that we build and people
you know, my dad, when he was 21, he came home from college one day, or school, I think. Well, it must have been college, and my grandma goes to him, pack your bags, you're getting married. Oh, wow. And he was like, obviously in those days it was a bit more forced, right?
Yeah.
And they hired a Ford Transit, and they drove from Sheffield all the way to Lahore in Pakistan, and they drove through France and Germany and Switzerland and Yugoslavia, because it was Yugoslavia then, and Italy and Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan. Wow. And my dad did all the driving. Amazing. He drove through all of it, and I still to this day I've not had a proper conversation with him about it, because he'll tell other people, because I've got a bit of a formal relationship with my dad. He doesn't really open up, but he's like, Yugoslavia was the most beautiful country he'd ever seen in the world, because they've destroyed it. Wow. Because he's seen the pictures and he's like, it's not the same, because it was beautiful, because it's perfect blend of climate, greenery, because in places like Pakistan it's not as much greenery because it gets burned with the sun. It's more harsh, but more brown. And then water, and it's just
issues. That's amazing though. And people can no longer do that now either.
No, you could. It's weird, because this is the thing that really gets to me. It's like, when you have a conversation with somebody about something, and the objection's always, but that was an ancient way of doing it. Now we're more modern. Now we have evolution, and we have all these things. But my dad could do 8,000 miles to Pakistan in a Ford Transit without, that was pre-sat nav, pre-auto route, pre all these things. Pre A to Zs and everything. My granddad basically spoke to some other guy. The guy goes, oh, you have to do this, this, and this. And then my granddad just memorized it all. And off they went. And then the van broke down in Turkey or something. And then some local guy just came and helped my dad fix the engine and fix the tire. And then just off they went.
Amazing.
These days, you would stress far more. Because right, do I have the visa? Do I have the jab? Do I have this permit? Do I have insurance? If the car breaks down, they're going to get me for this. And then do I have RAC? Do I have AA? And blah, blah, blah. I think it's actually harder to travel now than it was then.
I think so too. There's a lot more limitations, isn't there?
I know it's easier to book a flight now. And it's easier to look at it on the map, but actually it's a lot more expensive to get a hotel, a lot more expensive to jump on the plane. The planes are all tightly packed in sardines, and you've got to be worried. You have to genuinely be worried about the reception, how people are going to treat you, and security, blah blah blah. I think it's way harder now.
Yeah, and that spontaneity has almost been
completely extinguished.
Yeah, but I think within that still, it's again they say the strongest of intentions breaks the greatest of barriers. So I think you've just got to keep going with it and try and knock on the door. And
I think the thing that worked for me was when Nürburgring just started getting a little bit popular, when Jeremy Clarkson showed it on Top Gear, I went a month after.
Oh, amazing!
So this is pre Google Maps.
Yeah.
So I printed the route out on a piece of paper, and then I had one of those little PDA, used to call them PDAs, iPack things used to be called, and I got TomTom on there, and the battery used to last 24 hours. And once the battery goes, the data goes with it.
Yeah.
No, sorry, the battery used to last a couple of hours, and then once the battery goes, the data goes with it. You have to reinstall the entire thing all over again. Nightmare. So that was a lot of stress, and we used that, and we drove all through Europe. But honestly, at that time, just going through France and Belgium, it was actually quite underwhelming.
Yeah.
It was just all motorways.
Yeah.
There was none of the actual European life. It wasn't until we got to right near to the end, we got into the mountains in Europe, and that was interesting. And then where we stayed in Nürburg, the area that we stayed, that was very kind of wild. Cochem, it was called the place. That was very nice.
How long were you there for?
3 days. And honestly, I was there 3 days. I felt like I'd been there 3 months.
Wow.
I was a completely different person when I get back.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What did you take from it the most?
So, what did I take from it? I don't know.
What was the most interesting thing?
Well, I mean, we were just driving around racing on cars.
Right. Okay.
And there's this was literally a week after 7/7.
Okay, yeah.
So my uncle's, there was this guy who was driving around in a Porsche. He was a really, really good driver. And my uncle said to the guy, he goes, "Oh, can my nephew get in the car with you?" And initially the guy goes, yeah, of course, no problem. I wasn't there in front of him. I'd gone to the bathroom or something. I came out, and then when he saw my face, brown face, and all this, he got a bit nervous. And then he goes to my uncle. He goes, "Oh, is this guy all right? Are you sure he's okay?" Because this was literally a week after 7/7.
Yeah.
So he was a bit reticent about me. So there was a bit of that to it. And I got in the car with him, and he was an amazing driver. He did 150 miles an hour down the straight. Wow. And I was genuinely very scared. There's this thing that they have there. It's called the carousel.
Okay.
And it basically is like on I think it's a 30 or a 40. I think it's a 30-degree angle. So the road is cut down like on a 30-degree angle.
Wow.
And then what you do is there's a part of it that's cut down like this, and then it flattens off like this. So you either go around it really slowly, you go around it, and then you go around it like a normal road.
Yeah.
Or you go into the incline. Then you have to go fast because you have to dig your car into it.
Right.
And what a lot of people do, last minute they change their mind.
Yeah.
And they're going too fast for the outer bit and too slow for the thing bit, and then they crash.
Ah.
So you have to, if once you commit, you commit.
Yeah.
And this was a committing guy, and he went into the straight in a Porsche and went at a 30-degree angle, and he went around it at like 80 miles an hour.
Amazing.
Right, and I went around it like this,
yeah.
Literally. And he's like, "You're right, you're right." By the time we finished, it was 9 minutes. I think in those 9 minutes we bonded like we'd been mates for 20 years.
Yeah.
And after those 9 minutes, he was like, "You're right, you're right." We got out, and he was perfectly fine with me.
Yeah.
But it was very, very rejuvenating. I felt like I'd been away 3 months. It was very relaxing, very therapeutic.
But the thrill of it.
It was a thrill of it. Yeah, it was just being into it. And then, the day before we'd been on a train ride that went along the River Rhine.
Yeah.
That was just beautiful. And it costed like €3, €5.
Amazing. Yeah.
Just nice and slowly, just drives along the River Rhine.
Yeah.
It's just lovely.
It's beautiful to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's those images that you see.
Yeah.
And
very relaxing.
Very relaxing.
3 days, and I've done 10 days in Istanbul. I just came back as stressed as I was when I left.
Yeah.
There was no like, and I've done a day in Exmoor. One of the best holidays I've ever had was 2 nights in Exmoor.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had breakfast in the morning. There was a river flowing right by the window outside. The sheep grazing.
Yeah.
No mobile phone signal. No street lighting. It was like Postman. I don't know if you've seen the visuals of Postman Pat. It was just like Postman Pat. It's like bumpy roads, and there's no road markings, and there's no street lighting. There's no cell signal.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. It's so relaxing.
Yeah, amazing. That's the thing. These little thrills that keep you in nature and keep you around.
Yeah, I love being part of nature, but I don't want there's a lot of places where there's nature, but it's synthetic nature.
Yeah.
There's still a Starbucks.
Yeah.
There's still mobile phone signal. There's still buildings. But there's a bit of a beach. There's a bit of a woodland. There's a bit of a tree.
Yeah.
Then there's a motorway going right through the woodland.
Yeah.
That kind of nature, very kind of I don't like that. But in England, they have these things called areas of outstanding natural beauty.
Right.
So areas of outstanding natural beauty, they have certain. I think they have certain things as part of the regulation.
Yeah.
So you can't have too many mobile phone masts, and you can't. I don't know what the rules are, but I'm guessing. So, and you can't have franchises, you can't have McDonald's and Starbucks, and you can't have street, you know, you have to preserve that area the way that it was. So you go to Exmoor, you feel like you've gone back to 1950, you know, you really do. And immediately your energy you just calm right down, just by entering that space.
You get away from the sort of concrete jungle, don't you? Yeah.
So it can be done in the UK as well.
Yeah. I had an interesting experience like that in Colombia. So I was in Bogota and I met this backpacker from Germany.
Yeah.
We ended up going for a hike together there was a waterfall just on the outskirts of the city in Bogota, and we thought, okay, let's go.
Where's Bogota?
In Colombia.
Okay.
So as we were going, and I told him, look, I'm not really an experienced hiker as such, but it'll be fun, let's go. And he said, yeah, same, don't worry, I don't think it'll take too long. We ended up going through like a 4 or 5 hour trek to get to this place. No signal on the phones.
Were you bricking it?
We just thought, what's going on? We need to get to the end now, because now we've started. There's no turning back.
Okay.
I had to go through all these little patches of woods and all sorts to finally get to this waterfall, which was beautiful and surreal. There's monkeys there and all sorts.
Oh, wow.
And on the way back, we thought, how are we going to get back now? Because that was, we were both drained.
We're knackered, yeah.
It was raining as well towards the end, so it was completely drenched. I ended up hitchhiking with some travellers from Turkey, who gave us a ride back to the city.
And how long did that take? About half an hour, maybe?
About half an hour. We kept walking on the road, waiting for someone to drive by, and ended up hitchhiking. They got us back in, and we were like, perfect. We could. Now it's time to rest. But just little things like that when you're just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, the spontaneity. I know we when we were in Exmoor, we did this trek.
Yeah.
And it was full of like rocks, and it was very hard terrain. So it was very hard to navigate. I mean, it was. I think that walk. I can't remember how long that walk was. Maybe 3 miles, maybe 6 miles. But that took us 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And by the end, we were absolutely knackered. Absolutely knackered. And the problem was you can't get a taxi into that area.
Yeah.
There's no mobile phone signal. The taxi's not willing to come there no matter how much money you pay.
Yeah.
So now we were set on walking back. And so I said, okay, let's just go back along the normal road. And we were so knackered, we were dead.
Yeah.
And then we managed to actually hitch a ride with a guy. He put us in the back of his Land Rover, but he was quite nervous about us.
Yeah.
But at least we got. He took us like half of the way. He saved us a good hour probably.
Wow.
Yeah. But that is a lot more common in these kind of wild places that as you say.
Yeah.
It's probably more dangerous in those places as well.
Yeah.
But
this is part of the thrill, isn't it?
It's part of the thrill.
Part of
right.
adventure.